What's happening, everybody? Thank you for being here at All Access Live with Kevin Rankin. I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. If you came here anywhere other than YouTube, please do me a favor. Go to the link below. Go to youtube.com/@accesskevin. There, you'll have an opportunity to not only subscribe to the channel, but you can also become a member. And members have exclusive benefits to things like certain episodes that are members only. I interviewed Kelly Keegi, drummer of Night Ranger, in his home down in Phoenix. I had Midge Ure of Ultravox, Cy Kernan from The Fix backstage at the Aladdin. I also have an opportunity for those members to get some prize packages sent out. So we've got heavy metal stickers, we've got lanyards from the shows, we've got passes from A Flock of Seagulls, and some opportunities for guest list passes as well. So please do become a member. And if nothing else, please subscribe to the channel, like this video, share it, and tell all your friends. I've got some great guests coming up, and if you do subscribe, you'll be notified on Monday this next week. I have Mike Collins, amazing drummer in town. He's also a songwriter. He's got a great new single called Souvenirs, brand new debut video that we're going to do on Monday. And the singer from Porcupine Tree is featured on that episode. I also, on Tuesday, have guitar phenom Mike Stern. You didn't know him from the days of he played with Miles Davis, the man with the horn, the Yellow Jackets, Billy Cobham, list goes on. So Mike Stern will be here talking about his new record on Tuesday. All of that you get by just subscribing to the channel. So I would not have this show if it weren't for the amazing 5-Star Guitars. 5-Star is based in Beaverton, Oregon as well. So if you're interested in playing guitar, go to 5starguitars.com. You can even hit 5starguitars.com/allaccesslive. There's a page that has just information and deals for watchers of this show. So you'll get 15% off using the promo code AllAccess15 if you go to that link. So thank you, 5-Star Guitars, for helping us out. And now, an amazing Northwest phenom. This gentleman is he's a singer, songwriter. He's a entrepreneur. He owns some amazing venues right here in the Portland music area. We work together in the studio. He has a fantastic podcast that we'll talk about called Rome Schooled. And he's talking to us all the way from his Quonset hut, I think in his bomb shelter outside of outside of Portland, Oregon. So Jim Brunberg, how you doing, buddy?
Good to see you.
I love
They're
this.
coming, man. Watch out. I swear the bombs are coming.
I can hear the black helicopters now, man. Look out. That at least you have your guitar to protect you in there. That's good.
You got to have a guitar when you're in apocalypse land.
That's
I'm in my
right,
van.
man. Yeah. So what you want to explain why you're in this van?
Well,
and your video locked up for a second too. I'm wondering if maybe the black helicopters froze your internet. Now it's moving around a little bit again.
Is it still locked up?
Your head is frozen in a real precarious position, but this is good. This is good. It looks like the bombs actually went off and
wait, is it still frozen? What's important is, do I look good?
Well, your tongue is out, and
I don't know why.
Your audio sounds great, though.
Oh, good. Well, that's what counts. That's what's going in the ears.
That's right. Yeah. Well, you'll catch up, I'm sure. I want to thank the guys that are here on Instagram. I see those folks right there. Music City Management. I just talked about Kelly Keegi from Night Ranger. Music City is a manager of all their stuff, and he seems to be he's chiming in here on Instagram. So thank you guys. So I was hoping that talking over this would allow you to come back in. But what I'm going to do is I'll take you off camera for a second and bring you right back in, see if this works.
Oh, all right. I see. You're not frozen. I can see you clearly. The lips are moving.
Yep. And you moved to a different position, but are yet frozen once again. So there we go. Damn. You're moving again. No, we got you.
Well, I'm sorry.
Why are you in your van?
Because it wasn't planned to be this way. I really wanted to have a quality, good sound quality conversation with you, but my daughters are 15 and a half, and when I'm not writing songs, I'm dealing with chauffeuring them around, and today they are inside a building going to driving school so that I don't have to do this anymore. But it's also, I'm sort of in a place of terror because they're like in there with all these other teenagers who shouldn't be taking the wheel of a 3-ton or 2-ton hulk of steel. They're not ready. And I was just sitting here writing about that. In fact, because they're still just kids, and so
Yeah.
they give me a lot of ideas for songs because they say some ridiculous shit, and they're young enough to still be full of wonder and full of like wrongheadedness,
Yeah.
but they're old enough to be going to driving school, so it's this really tenuous time.
That is a crazy thing to think about, people that age behind the wheel where, lives can be affected. But,
Oh,
I talked to Andrew Paul Woodworth about this yesterday, about the difference in his songwriting before children and after, and how the focus completely changes.
oh
So
yeah,
the last 15 years, Jim Brunberg's writing is a little bit different than what it was.
yeah.
What has changed in your writing style the most?
Well, I guess it's not so much that it changed about having kids, but I stopped writing songs for a handful of years, and I just was producing bands and playing in bands, and because being on the marquee or whatever, having your name out there as a songwriter, it means that you have to do all this work to keep the machine going, and you need to make sure that you put butts in seats and all that. And I took a vacation from that so that I could wipe butts. And wow, I just
Nice.
came up with that. I went
Nice.
from putting butts in seats to wiping butts, and that was like very joyous epiphany, is that I really enjoyed hanging out with like these little kids.
Yeah.
My daughters, they're twins and they're 15. So, but once they got to be they sort of exited the super cute stage and they started to want to jam and make music of their own. And there's always an orchestra of instruments in this van because one of them plays the flute and the sax. And so we've always got like a travel flute, like a $30 garage sale flute and a travel sax and then a trumpet ready to go so we can all jam wherever we are. If like we're camping or on our way to school, we have an extra half an hour, we'll jam. And they love that. They're just,
Yeah.
they're jammers. They're like I was when I was a teenager. All they want to do is jam. So that brought back my wanting to. And I don't write songs with for them. I don't write kids music. And
Yeah.
although they're good enough now, they play on my music. They're better musicians than I ever was on their
Really?
instruments. Yeah. So
Yeah.
they're like, so now I just can, when I write something, I can hear it being brought to life by people that I really love. Whether it's my bandmates in Wonderly, the band that I play with, or if it's my daughters and me, and it flushes out. And I think it was just more of an evolution of getting to do it on my terms as opposed to being an industry guy. And I know nothing against people out there who are doing that route. They're playing for a label or touring incessantly
Yeah.
behind a record and stuff. That's good hard work. It's amazing. In fact, you're really lucky to be able to do that kind of work. But it's also, it had its time in my life, and now I'm sort of doing it weirdly, doing it my way in a
Yeah.
van in a parking lot in the suburbs.
I love it. Yeah, but this is probably not where you pictured you were gonna be, right? In your 20s as you were out, taking on the world as a musician. But
Did any of us even think about where we were going to be when we were in our later in our whatever we're in now?
well, I will say a lot of the singers that I've talked to, in this generation of music, like 70s, 80s, the artists that I had talked to, they said, we wrote these songs without thinking that we're gonna have to sing them in the same register, right? When we're in our 50s and 60s, as our voices change so much. And I had Mickey Thomas from Starship on the show,
Oh
and
wow.
he still sings the songs in the same key. His voice is incredible, but he's an outlier, right? I mean, that doesn't happen for very many people. I think he's
That's
74.
but it does happen if you stay in, not so much stay in shape, but if you don't hurt yourself.
Yeah,
Mickey, what an incredible set of pipes. I don't have anything like that, but I sing higher now than I ever did, and it's not because I'm a great singer. It's just because I found this weird way to hold myself and sing from a different place, and so now I love singing in that Smokey Robinson vein. I'm using this part of my voice, and like you ask Andrew Paul Woodworth that you just mentioned him,
yeah,
he still sings high as shit, and
he
he's getting
does.
up there in years too.
Yeah,
I don't think you lose it unless you hurt it. Pavarotti, man, I mean, he was incredible, and Aretha, she had. Hey, there's somebody getting in my van. Hey, I'm doing an interview in here, daughter.
The lady said she'd never seen such a good first score on the first test.
Oh, we got bragging going on here.
oh,
One
nice.
question.
High five. That's awesome. But you have to get out
Fantastic.
because I'm talking to my friend Kevin.
I'm just really quiet. I want to sit in there.
but if you're sitting in here, I can't like bullshit and act like a rock star. I have to be
No, but
real. Okay, close the door. You
I
can be in
love
here.
it. Oh my god, this is great.
So, speak of the devil.
Yeah, right. Well, congrats on the high score though. The teacher's never seen someone with such a high score. That's impressive.
I think he
That
just wanted to get rid of her because she's such a know-it-all.
yeah. How different are the two girls?
They're incredibly different.
Yeah.
Whoa. I mean, just as different as all get out. This one is a symphony person who loves to practice literally 3 hours a day and with no pressure from me whatsoever. She just self-motivated, flute, piccolo, now saxophone. Oh, Dad, I think I'm going to spend the summer grinding on the oboe so I can be an oboe in the orchestra next year. Just
Wow.
like those sort of things. The other one, I'm like, Vern is the other one. I'm like, Vern, did you do your scales? Did you practice at all this week? Did you can you please practice? And the only way she'll do it is if I sit down at the piano and start playing like a jazz progression and put a fake book in front of her, and then she,
Really?
or she'll improvise blues pentatonic a little bit, but it's like pulling teeth to get her to practice. So they're
Yeah.
pretty different.
And
But
she'll
anyway, yeah.
probably Vern will be the one that actually makes it big in the business, right?
Well, poor Dana's like working for the Illinois Symphony, something like writing letters
As a
home.
yeah,
Dad, I
as an
got
usher.
demoted to second chair. Wah.
As an usher. But, well well, you talked about, those days when you were younger. So, did you grow up in Portland? You're not a Portlander, right?
No, I kind of grew up everywhere. My parents moved around the whole time. You're a native, right? You're
Nope.
native?
30 years, but I'm from Montana.
Oh, wow. All right. Well,
I
that
grew up
kind
in
of
a
checks.
cabin. I grew up in a cabin that looked a lot like the inside of your van right there, actually. It's,
Oh, yeah?
yeah,
You're a
I mean,
Kaczynski kid.
yeah, no mail bombs, but yeah, it was crazy.
My
And I
parents moved
came
all the time, and San Francisco is kind of where I landed, but then moved to Portland in '99. So I'm 25 years
hmm,
now, loving it.
yeah, so you feel local. I mean, really, you are a Portland fixture, between the venues you own and the ubiquitous gigs, everybody sees you everywhere, right? So, I think you and I first we talked about this a little bit ago. We did some gigs with Bill Wadhams, right, from Animotion, um, doing his solo stuff, and then you were producing the Crazy Enough record for Storm Large, right? She came up and she
Hmm.
was doing that stuff just prior to her theater shows. But you'd been around here for a long time. I mean, you talked about Ben Landsberg and Wonderly and some other projects. So when you came to Oregon, actually from California, there was another band I think that you had played. Were you in Colobo? Is that right?
No, but we played a lot with those guys. My
Okay,
band was called Box Set,
box
and
set. That's what it was. Colobo and box set. Yeah.
we used to do all kinds of stuff with them. They would they let us open for them at the Crystal Ballroom, and we'd let them open for us at the Fillmore, and it was like a lovely exchange of humans. And I still keep in touch with most of those guys. They were such a nice group of people. They are such a nice group of people.
Yeah.
Michelle, and Jenny and Caleb. They're just great folks. So.
I think before you were in box set, then that's where the overlap would have been because I was with Onalama with Leah Kruger up
Oh,
until
wow.
yeah,
Ah,
that was the yeah,
Analama.
yeah.
So great. Such a
Yep.
great band.
We
I
talked about
had
Ned
such
Failing earlier. When I left
Yeah.
Onalama, Ned was the one that came in to take that was the first
Oh, was that
overlap.
right?
Yep. Yeah.
She's so amazing.
Yeah.
I come back
Best
to
one.
us, Leah Kruger, wherever you are. I'd
Amen.
love to see you. Love your songs. It's only music. It's only music. That song breaks my heart. It's
Yeah.
so good.
You know what? She was the only artist that I think I've ever been with. Like I would break down in tears on stage playing shows with her. There were a couple of songs that she would do, The Same Moon, if you know that one. She'd do
Yeah.
that solo with her bass. And as a guy who's an accomplished bassist, I mean, that the part was interesting and very unique, and her voice, I mean, it would get me every time.
And
It
she's a
was,
true composer and
yeah,
unique voice. Nobody could sing like that. Her range was way up, but it could
yeah,
come down and be really gravelly. And she could sing in that Ricky Lee Jones sort of little girl weird voice, and then make it huge. Really versatile voice. Actually
yeah.
learned a lot about singing from producing the first Dirty Martini record that she was on,
Oh,
and just
yeah.
getting to work with her and seeing how she just approached it. very naturalistic, no bullshit. I mean,
Yeah.
you played in a band with her, so you may have seen more layers than I did, just from producing that one record. And we did a live record that I mixed with them and stuff. And just I loved her approach. It was so
Yeah.
honest. It is, I'm
It's the
sure.
truth. Yeah,
Yeah.
there was nothing corporate about what she did. You know, everything
Hmm.
was true, is vulnerable, authentic, and I've seen that with a lot of artists that you've worked with. You know, we talked about Storm, and I watched the process. You had me come in and do reference tracks, right, for some of those tunes, and Storm was in there, and like in between stuff where we'd lay down drum tracks. Like she was going over vocal stuff with you, and I saw this too with Cleveland. We went into the studio to do a theme for the Blazers, right? We did Ballroom Blitz, the Sweet
Oh
cover,
yeah, I saw
but
that many times. Yeah, it was very
God,
cool.
man. With Storm, they would say, okay, so maybe do another couple harmonies with this, just a different approach. And she'd lay down another line and another line and another line. And each time it was always one take, and it was a different interpretation of the harmony. It blew my mind how professional and how powerful she was. I mean, I've known her for a long time, but just seeing that, and you probably saw it in the studio too, right? So like it makes your job probably a lot easier, right?
Oh, she's a dream. She's
Yeah.
incredible. It's not even a job with her. It's like it's just an opportunity to be part of music making. And that band that was sort of post balls, pre, and it lasted for a long time. That the Crazy Enough play that she did, it was just James Beaton, and Scott. Um, Scott, oh my gosh, what's Scott's last name? Oh my god, he's one of my favorite people in the universe. It's Spider-Man. It was just Scott and James and me. Oh god, he's
Yeah.
gonna kill me when he sees this. It's just my brain's not working. Too many things.
That's all right. You're in a
Driving.
van. You can blame everything on the van. It's all right. It's gas fumes.
I keep wanting to say McCoy, but it wasn't Scott McCoy. It was the other guy. It was the other multi-talented, incredible songwriter. His band was Amelia. He wrote the songs with Tisha for, and that's how I knew him. But it was just an incredible little band, and we were super tight and in
Yeah.
the studio, so it was easy to be honest with each other, and to get to work with a talent like Storm was just a great opportunity. So
That's the studio that you had wasn't it like an old Masonic ballroom, Masonic temple?
just
Okay.
like Miniman's guys.
Okay.
Remember why I got to go in there for the first time, but it was this abandoned Masonic temple. It was all washed out because the roof had failed a couple times, so it had this really weird haunted look. And so I just set up in the middle of the ballroom and then put some baffles around, set up what was basically a mobile rig. It was the guts of what was originally Mississippi Studios. It was just the guts of all the preamps in a rack and box of microphones and a bunch of mic stands, and we were just going straight into an old Apple computer there in the middle of the ballroom. And when we needed more separation, we would just move further away from each other or into the dressing room next to it. And we needed more reverb, we would move the mics further away from whatever it was that we were recording.
Oh my god, that's awesome.
It was a very natural process of recording that album. And then we did some overdubs in the like the choirs on My Vagina Is 8 Miles Wide.
Yeah.
Those
Huge.
were all done in the basement over at the Falcon, which is right up the street. So
Yeah, man. What I was going to ask you about that. That's funny because the video is incredible, but the audio recording, it sounds like you have a choir of about 100 people. How many people did you actually get in there to do those background vocals?
it might add up to 100 when you double everybody. You double everybody up.
Yeah, it was
Yeah, I
huge.
don't know. There's some non-singers in there too, which made it extra special.
I'm sure. Yeah. No, well, in that session, there's some audio or some YouTube footage of Davey Nipples coming in and totally interrupting because on that track in particular, remember he dropped his pants and was mooning me, like just took me out of phase and laying down that track, but lots of hilarity. There's
I wouldn't want to see that these days. Jeez,
yeah,
as grown up people, I guess it wasn't that long ago. His butt still
wasn't
probably looks roughly the same.
yeah I don't know that Stevie's let himself go, but it wasn't pleasing even then, honestly. So that's okay. Yeah, yeah. Um, he's got to work on his hygiene, but um, the so the recording stuff. You mentioned the guts of the Mississippi studio. So when you did you actually purchase that, or did I mean as the studio and open it up as a music venue? Because it's been
Well, it
around.
started as it was just gonna be a studio because
Okay.
I was married and my band box set had we were on Capricorn Records, and Capricorn Records got bought out by Seagram's, and they just halted everything. But it was a good moment for us because when they halted us, we had just received our our recording advance for the second album that we were going to release, and we had the songs and everything, and but we got the advance, which back in the day meant something.
Yeah.
They're for young musicians watching this, they used to pay you to make music in the studios and like this incredible thing. You get a recording budget. So we got that recording budget, and then Seagram's bought it out, and the bean counters at Seagram's never said, "Hey, give us that back. We want it back." So I had, for the first time in my life, money in my pocket, and on North Mississippi, there was nothing really. Closed down businesses. The infrastructure had fallen into disrepair. There were a couple small businesses on the street, but there was one that was a church that had lost its congregation, and it lost its congregation to sort of, issues. There were a lot of drugs being done in the basement and stuff. So it was a sort of a haunted church, and nobody wanted it, and it was a total mess. The back of the church was falling down into the building next to it. So it was $80,000. That's where I put my part of the advance from the recording thing, and that's how Mississippi Studios was born. And friends, musicians, family helped build it up into a recording studio. And then I realized after making a dozen or so, maybe 20 albums, that I didn't have the patience to own a recording studio. People who own recording studios are selfless, patient, incredible people, and they're artists as well. A really rare combination. So, like, running a recording studio is it's something I honor with a lot of depth and admiration, because after the first 2 hours of like getting the snare tone right, I'm out. I'm like, nope,
Yeah.
snare tone sounds fine. Stop.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
start recording music. And nowadays people take a more laissez-faire attitude towards recording. Am I saying that word right? I'm not French, obviously. But now when people go in to record, you don't spend more than a half a day usually getting the drum tones. But this was coming out of the 90s, and this was in the early aughts, like 2001, 2, 3, 4, 5, that era. People still wanted to spend a lot of time getting a snare tone, and I
Right.
wasn't. My heart wasn't in that. I was like, oh,
Sure.
let's get to the songs. Let's get going here.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So when you said you kind of took it from the recording studio, did you envision it being a live music venue?
no, not at all. No,
Yeah.
it happened when the first, I think, Hot Tuna, the acoustic Hot Tuna was playing in town, and I just had this sort of empty room downstairs that I was trying to rent out. I was thinking, oh, I'll rent this out to like some quiet business that won't disturb the recording thing, like a quilt shop or something, like a yarn store,
Yeah.
because it was very, that's the kind. And back in those days, you could afford to have a yarn store on North
Right.
Mississippi. Now
God,
you need to sell $500 pairs of pants or whatever to be able to
it's
survive.
crazy. Like, people watching this now that maybe moved to Portland late don't realize that area, right, North Mississippi, which is like, one of the most hip areas of all of Portland, was really sketchy back in the
Oh
day,
yeah,
man. Yeah,
yeah.
you didn't want to walk down there alone, and most things were, it looked like a bomb kind of went off, deserted.
It was boarded up, yeah. And
Yeah,
so, but so we just decided to use it. Hey, once in a while we'll do a thing downstairs, and people will play music, and it'll be, the artists that are recording upstairs play downstairs, and that'll be cool. But it just snowballed really quickly, because it just so happened that the, like, places, I think the Snake and Weasel around that time was going through
right.
some stuff, and the East Ave Tav was maybe going through some stuff, and so there was a shortage of small rooms to play. So I just got to meet all these people who were Portland players. They were
Yeah,
out playing, and I personally wasn't so much into the blues, or some of the things that I used to think of as like formulaic. Like, I didn't want to be a blues bar and have like
yeah,
predictable. So I tried to keep it as weird as possible and as much original music as possible. And that's where Mississippi Studios came from, and has just kind of gradually, for over 20 22 years now, 21 years,
Yeah.
is still that's what we do. We offer original music by the people who by the people who wrote the music playing it. So
Yeah. I've discovered some bands there. I've seen that you've had really cool national touring acts come through, and it's a funny thing. If I leave Portland and we're out doing gigs and people talk about having come through Portland on tour, and they'll say, "Yeah, we played this place. It's weird, man. It was Missouri studio." They said Mississippi studios, and they said, "Yeah, yeah." And they said it's weird because it has this cool balcony and there's a bar on one side of it, and it's an interesting setup. You can get a cool perspective from anywhere in the room. You've got, the little like sort of seated, small amphitheater seating, the auditorium seating in the very back and the top,
yeah.
and then the balcony that goes around. One of my favorite experiences ever was to go see Tango Alpha Tango there. One of my
Oh
favorite
yeah,
bands
great.
in the
Yeah,
area.
that's awesome.
Nathan Trube would climb on his amp stack at the end of their set, climb up to the balcony and hang off that balcony. And I kept thinking to myself, I wonder what Jim's insurance is like. I mean, have you had any experiences, any close calls or worse off that balcony?
Yeah, there's always shit that happens in venues. I'm really glad to hear that people remember it, even if they have the wrong state name.
Yeah, right,
And it doesn't make any sense because it's in Oregon. But
right.
yeah, insurance is actually a real dilemma for venues across the country right now because we are regarded, especially independent venues, are getting the shaft from insurance companies because they're regarded as risky places. But I mean, you and I know the safest place you can be, unless you're like in the mosh pit at a
Right.
certain type of show,
Yeah,
safest place you can be is in a venue because you're surrounded by people who care and
yeah.
they're there to have a good time. And if you go down, something happens to you, they're not just going to walk by. Usually the show will stop, a paramedic will come in, or people will take you, to a safe place. And I mean, it's one of the safest places in the world, a music venue. So like, it's been a kind of an issue. But yeah, we haven't had bad things happen to patrons or bands, but other people have come in and behaved badly, I guess, over the
Oh, sure.
years. It's
Oh,
always kind of
yeah.
bums me out.
Well, when you get alcohol involved, anywhere, a lot of times that's what, sort of facilitates some of that. I mean, um, yeah, I was just at a NFL game last week, right up in Seattle, and you watch they stop serving alcohol, by the third quarter in NFL games anymore because they know that people are going to be unruly and start fights.
Stupid.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you just see, you see kids out there getting pelted from, big cans, from dumb drunk guys, and it's unfortunate that adults behave that way sometimes, but that's the case.
Yeah.
You know, you talk about venues. The other venue, the prominent one in town. I mean, Revolution Hall. When you open that up, taking a school and reintroducing an incredible music venue to Portland. I've seen some phenomenal shows there. Man, I just like some remarkable shows. What made you, because you'd already worked with Mississippi for a while, what made you feel like, okay, I just want to take on an even bigger endeavor in the music and
Oh,
music?
I didn't. I was so happy right where I was, but so we didn't redevelop the school, but there was a guy named Art DeMuro who's like a famous Portland small time family scale developer guy who loves music, and he had always come to Mississippi Studios, and he and his company had bought it from the San Francisco or from the Portland Public Schools, saying, well, we're going to make it into like a mixed use space. They couldn't figure out what to do with the old high school auditorium, and he invited me and Kevin, my business partner, over to look at it. And we're like, yeah, this could work. This is great. This is a really cool room because it's not very deep. It's an auditorium, but it's small. And so we just kind of figured it out with them, and they helped. And since then we've opened a couple other venues up, just trying to sort of keep recreating spaces that are unique and memorable, so that when people tour, they want to go there. So
Yeah.
Jack White was there last night, 2 nights ago. Jack White did a show at Rev Hall, and he was scheduled to play our other venue, Polaris Hall, um, the night before, but then the Foo Fighters, Dave Grohl's family stuff happened, and they had to cancel a headlining gig at some festival on the East Coast. So Jack White got the gig doing the festival.
That's in, yeah, man. That you wonder if we revisit this conversation, or you think about the Jack White cancellation, I don't know, a year from now, whether the dust will have settled on Dave Grohl and his, and his disclosures. But um, well, good on Jack for getting the gig. Kind of a drag that Polaris Hall didn't happen, right? But
It was yeah.
What's that venue like?
Polaris Hall, it used to be the North Star Ballroom, and it was an Oddfellows Hall, and it holds 300 people. It's about the same size as Mississippi Studios, only it doesn't have a balcony. It's wider and deeper. It's a dance hall.
Okay.
Local punk bands love it because you can actually get the mosh pit goes, and we can do all ages shows more easily there because there aren't all the nooks and crannies. It's easier for the state to say, okay, things are under control here. You can let some minors in. I don't know. It's hard to describe. It's Portland's got so many great independent weird venues that are all so different. Like Frank's Places, where I think I first met you at Dante's, and then the Star. They're both singular venues in the 400 to 500 or 300 to 500 range, and then Mississippi Studios evolved into what it is really organically, and so did Polaris. Same size range, and forever we had the Doug Fir, and now we're going to have the Doug Fir again. Yeah. So there's like this great breeding ground for bands. I think Portland as a music town is going to come roaring back.
I agree.
Over the next 5-10 years. You're going to see a lot of bands coming out of here because you can still do it. It's not as cheap to live here anymore, but it's still a great music town.
What's capacity of Rev Hall?
Well, when we do it seated, we have removable seats now. I personally built we had to replace all the seats. My friend Matt Lackey and I had to manufacture or remanufacture these old-fashioned plywood bent seats to stay with the historical, because you couldn't change anything about it. So we had to fix all the old seats and re-put them in because they were student seats. They were only 16 and a half inches wide. But then we always knew that we'd have to replace them someday because rock and roll is going to destroy these things. It's not like kids at an assembly. So now we have these removable seats. It still holds, I think, 835 seated. Wow. When we take the removable seats out, it's more like, I'm not really sure the number. It's more.
Yeah.
There is not an official number.
Okay. But, the fire code probably says at least 1,000, which is the
fire code. I think it's like 900. I don't know. It's more. It fits more, which is lovely.
One thing that I noticed when you introduced that venue to Portland, you really focused on an incredible sound system. The sound in there blows my mind. It really is a phenomenal sound system. And Doug Fir was known for that too. I know that when they talked about this new opening, that the focal point is going to be just the audiophiles will love it. But was that? Did you get some help with that?
Bringing it in? Well, I mean, I was going to jump in and say it's not really about the system; it's the operator. Okay. We value our engineers, and the Mississippi group of engineers. I think we have 10 in rotation now. Are the best sound engineers in town. And the room, when we built the room, when I designed it, I did it with all non-parallel walls. So there's all those big vertical things at Mississippi. That's to hide the fact that the walls are crooked. They kind of go like this. This one's 3 degrees off, and then this one's 2 degrees off, and this one's 4.2 degrees off. So so there's never any slap back. And we tried our best to augment the room at Rev Hall to do the same thing through conditioning it and changing it around. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a good sound system. And Eric over at Rose City Sound did a great job of helping us outfit it. But it's really more about being mindful of and having valued professional staff. Like the people behind it. Like our guys and gals are the best sound engineers in the Pacific Northwest. I'll talk about them all day long, bore you to tears talking about them because they're amazing. So.
Hang on just one sec, buddy. I was taking a look at comments here from somebody on Instagram.
I'm not seeing any comments in this app that we're using. I was hoping there'd be like a stream of people asking personal questions or, how to, maybe some engineering tips.
Hang on one sec here. for some reason, the data is not going through on YouTube. It's going through on Facebook and Instagram. YouTube is where we get all of our comments in the chat right there. And so um, this is the first time I've ever seen this where it gets hung up on that.
Maybe nobody's watching. That's okay. We're having a good time.
I love the conversation. It's great. And it's all captured for later on too. Well, we'll just we're going to keep going here on this for a second because I want to vamp on this venue. Revolution Hall, my favorite experience, I think. I mean, I've seen some shows there that blew my mind, but my favorite experience was this birthday celebration they had for Tim Ellis, one of my favorite musicians that I ever played with. When they had a birthday for him, he'd been diagnosed with cancer, and this was kind of a salute to Tim and a farewell from a lot of the people that he played with. I'm wondering, did you know if that was recorded at all?
I bet it was. I was
Yeah.
out of town. I was on the road with Wonderly, I think. So I was on the East Coast, but I heard so many people talk about what a special night that was.
Yeah.
We do record most nights, and I bet you that one did get recorded. There was so many people who loved Tim.
Yeah. You talk about somebody who owned a recording studio and had to be patient, but was also, just a phenomenal artist. And yeah, he, when I played a long time with Tim and Jim, and I think that made me such a much more well-rounded musician. Definitely honed a lot of chops with that. And Tim was somebody who, having raised a ton of kids, I think he had 6 children.
Wow.
He somehow he was the first person I met that could do that, be a father, family man, business owner, musician, do all this stuff music related, but have that many kids. He was putting one daughter through school at Oxford, and he had, I mean, it just, it was so inspiring to me,
Yeah.
right? Because he gave 100% to everything he did, and he'd do 4 gigs a day. He'd do like a session. He'd go do one gig. He'd show up at 7:00 and do a 7:00 gig, and then go off to another show at 9:00, and then show up for 3 church sessions the next morning. But
that's amazing. I didn't know he had 6 kids.
Yeah, I know it's at least 5, but I think it may have been 6. And his daughter, did you ever see the documentary that his daughter put together about him?
No, I didn't.
It's called This Is Tim. Phenomenal movie. I saw the screening at the Hollywood Theater when it came out, and whether you knew Tim Ellis or not, that story about this guy who could somehow balance all this and still run these businesses, I know you would relate because you're a father.
I'd love to. Where can you see that? Can you stream it anywhere?
I'll bet it's out on Amazon. I'll take a look. Yeah, I'll put it in the show notes when we get going. But
that'd be awesome.
It's phenomenal. Yeah, it brings you to tears, especially when if you know the guy. But even if you don't, people should, right?
I knew him just a little bit. Played a couple like special events with him.
Everything was special when you played with him.
Well, yeah, like one-offs.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about your special gigs, man. I mean, we talked Wonderly, so you have this band with Ben Landsberg, right? So that's the gig, and you've got a new record coming out next month.
November 2nd, we have a release for our album Wolves, and that's a pretty. I'm really excited about that because it's our best album that we've ever done. I still love albums, and it coheres to itself. Like the songs we write story songs. I write. My stuff is all about characters and dilemmas that they get themselves into. And together, when Ben and I write music together, it sort of takes it to a new level, and the characters end up doing weirder things, and it's higher stakes because we sort of one up each other and the story gets more intense. So we have story songs, and like we did a song about a woman who works at Plaid Pantry, and she's really wrestling with the idea of whether she might come back that night and rob the store herself. So just this question of which wolf do you feed? You've got 2 wolves, and she's really grappling with that. And so when it was time, I was like, oh, I want to make a video. So I'm the one who gets crazy about the video ideas. So I want to make this video about this woman working at Plaid Pantry. So being a Portland guy, I get in touch with Plaid Pantry. They say no. They were very polite about it. Thanks so much for thinking of us, and we listened to your music and we love your music, but there's just too much liability and we can't do it. Sorry. They were very nice.
You can inspire thefts all over all the plaid pantries.
Yeah, now that I think that was the problem. So but you know who was into it was Tootie Cole. Tootie,
Yes,
yeah,
Fred's
we're so
wife.
lucky because I didn't know that she had a bodega, but Jenny told me that she does. Jenny, who actually is one of our managers at Polaris, and when she's not touring with her band, it was like, wow, Tootie has a bodega now. I knew she had a store under Mississippi Records for a while, but I guess she's part owner of this bodega. The It's down in Clackamas, and the name of it is Tombstone, right? I think that's the
Yeah,
name of it.
yeah. It used to be
So,
Tombstone Records and Music. Yeah,
yep. So she
yep.
let us record there, or like film the video, and she even made a cameo in it, which was really
Awesome.
cool. We were thrilled, and she's just like the coolest person on the
Heck yeah.
planet for obviously for a million reasons.
Right.
Generous and funny and stories.
So the video's not out yet.
No, I think it comes out the day before the show, November
Okay.
2nd. So it comes out
When
November 1st, and then our show's November 2nd. So
and the show is at the Polaris.
no, the show is, and that's the thing. I can't play my own venues. It's just too
Yeah,
weird.
really?
So, yeah, no. I know. I have staff. I have friends slash staff who've worked with me for 20 years, and I don't want to subject them to it. Sometimes I'll like make a guest appearance on something, but I cannot play. It's just too embarrassing to play, at Mississippi Studios or Revolution Hall because I they know me too well, and it's just weird. It's like, oh, there's
Interesting.
the boss, and besides that, I feel like I need to earn a spot on a stage. Like I
Sure.
don't want to give I don't want there to ever be the suggestion that like I told my booking agents to save that date for me because I'm important because everybody's fighting for a spot that makes sense. If I'm playing on a Friday night at
Yeah.
Mississippi Studios, that means there's like 8 other bands that wanted to play on Friday night at Mississippi Studios, and they're not going to play there. But I don't want to necessarily play on a Monday night.
Yeah.
so I,
Right.
so we wondered, we go at it the honest way and just try to get gigs other places.
Yeah.
Nothing against
So,
people who play their own stages. It's just that I'm neurotic about it, so I
no,
just won't let.
I think that's noble of you. So November 2nd is
It's more vanity than nobility. It's like
yeah.
I just don't want to look out and see like my bartender's looking at me like, huh? So this is the shit that you're putting on wax, man. You've been calling yourself a musician, and now this is what you're making.
That's
So
embarrassing. God, well. So the second show, where is it at?
it's the November 2nd is at the old church.
The old church. Awesome.
Yep.
Right on. Cool venue. Very,
Yep.
very beautiful venue.
We'll have our whole
And
band there, which is Ned Failing on drums, usually, and Dan Hunt on drums also.
okay.
Jack Mortensen on bass, and Alan Hunter, who we were talking about before, also
Yeah.
plays bass with us from time to time. And then we have some special guests that we're going to do some cool musical arrangements of their stuff with Mary Flower, Laura Veers, Rachel Taylor Brown, and 2 other special surprise guests that I am not allowed to mention yet. So
Right.
yeah,
So Dave Grohl and Jack
yeah,
White. Nice. That's cool. Awesome.
those guys.
And so
Waiting
all
for the
right.
dust
So
to settle.
that'll be the Wolves release. You've got a brand new record that you also just came out with. Your solo stuff. I think we talked about that a little bit before, right? So I was listening to "Churning Through the Apocalypse" when you and I first started chatting today. I was listening to "You Deserve More."
You deserve more. Yeah.
And then "Songs of Stupid Hope." So within a year, you've come out with 3 new records. Was this stuff that you worked on during the pandemic that you just decided, all right, I'm going to just do a dump?
Yeah. All things must pass kind of a thing.
Yeah.
It might have had something to do with the pandemic. I think I came out of the pandemic feeling lucky to be here and feeling very inspired to have the opportunity to make music, and all my little quirks and neuroses that had preceded that went out the window because I was like, well, uh, I can swear on this thing, right?
Heck yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I don't know. I was just like, fuck it.
Yeah.
It's not worth worrying about where your place is in the pecking order of things, and whether no, don't wait for a label. Don't just really make your stuff, make your statement, and release it. And in the thick of the pandemic, I needed hopeful songs that weren't stupid. So I wrote songs of stupid hope as opposed to stupid songs of hope, which somebody called it by accident in a review once, which I love. As opposed
Yeah.
to stupid songs about hope, I tried to write some songs that made sense, that had a like a little bit of a realistic sense of hope to them, buried in their stories. And then it just felt so good to do that and to release it. Um, and you can do that. It doesn't cost money much to record yourself and play your songs into a microphone. We were talking about cheap interfaces before. You
Yeah.
buy yourself a little cheap interface, hook it up to your laptop, and pour your heart out for several months, and then you have a record, and you release it. And I did. I didn't hold back, so I did it. And so there are 4 records, actually within a year. I didn't even realize that was happening. It just happens. If you just let it go and just go for it, that's where you end up with a bunch of records. I don't know if anybody's listening to them, but they're all out there on Spotify if anybody wants to, and I think they're pretty
Yeah.
good. You know?
They are fantastic. I mean, we also, you talked about the sonic quality. Your voice is so rich on them. The recordings sound so good. They sound
Oh,
like you had
thank
massive
you, Kevin.
$1 million budget, for each one of those. To me, the uniqueness of each one is to me, it was kind of surprising because I would think, how, if you're writing these songs all in this vein at the same time, how do you decide, all right, this is going to go on this record and this is going to go on this one? I mean, those songs were almost, like chronologically released at the same time. So
Well, they just came out as every time I had a batch that made sense, I just would release it, and it was also a really a really good excuse to call my friend Sean Krogan from the Mistons and say, "Hey, let's put a let's put an image on this and call it a record." And I would write songs like there's on "You Deserve More." There's a whole mess of songs about this Lydia character and different visitations from different characters' viewpoints about this this woman, who maybe is involved in sort of a love and theft triangle along with the questionable non-reliable protagonist guy. And so I just was an exercise. I wasn't making myself do it, so it would just happen. I'd wake up in the morning and be like, hey, what trouble did Lydia get into today? And what did Lydia do? And so it's all about all these things about Lydia, and looking back on, and his perspective, looking back on what happened in the previous song. And I just kind of got off on that. It was very self-indulgent. But I think what came out of it are these sort of mostly upbeat, quirky tunes that are
yeah,
all out there for people to find stuff in. There's little hidden things, or you could think that it's about something else, and that's okay too. But then I don't know, my kids were going back to school, and I met a teacher who I didn't like very much. So my revenge on this teacher that I didn't like very much, like, oh man, I can tell that guy's going to give them a hard time. This teacher's not going to be their cup of tea. So I wrote a teacher character who dies after committing, like, he had a secret life, and he dies. And so every song is an opportunity for some sort of light therapy of sorts for me, just for me.
yeah.
And if somebody
I
else
love it.
finds use, that's great.
That's maybe you've got a vehicle that not a lot of people have, to be able to deal with that. As a parent, you're so protective of your kids, in places that they can't defend themselves. I mean, with teachers and adult figures that might actually impact them, and and their self confidence in ways. It's great that they've got an advocate in their pop. So, speaking of that, I mean, your connection with the kids, Rome Schooled podcast that came out several years ago, and it greatly involved your kids and their inspiration, eh?
Are you here with me? We have one of the stars of Rome School here that came and somehow got out of driving school early.
Oh, nice. That's
She
awesome.
she can she can speak to Rome Schooled.
Hey, how you doing?
This is Dana.
I'm good. How are
Dana,
you?
nice to formally meet you. So your
This
podcast,
is Kevin. This is his show.
Hi.
good to
All
see you.
Access Live. He interviews famous rock stars, and then I guess he had some time to kill, so he's interviewing. I mean, he has like this great show. Mike
I
Stern, by the way, Mike Stern.
yeah.
Oh,
How cool is
love
that, right?
I
Yeah,
He's like my favorite. That Fat Time solo that he plays on the Miles Davis, MF, is it called MF Horn? I think that album, Fat
man with
Time,
a horn.
Man
Yeah,
with a Horn. listen to that is the best guitar solo ever played. And he was like a teenager. And Miles just said, "Here, take it."
Oh yeah, man.
It's sick.
I will make sure that I'll bring that part up when we talk.
Oh
I
God, tell him that I'm the biggest fan. I went to see him in New York and met him, and he's just the smiliest guy. He is so intense. But anyway, Rome Schooled. This is the star, one of
that
my twin daughters from Rome Schooled.
so
They asked questions.
you were much younger at that point, right? When the show came out.
I was like half the age that I am now.
Less than half the age.
Less than half. Oh my gosh.
First of all, congratulations on completing today's driving school. I'm sure that was a lot of fun. Yeah. Were you the one that had the highest scores that the teacher had ever seen?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we got to hear a little bit about your academia, how you're very focused on your instrument, and will practice for 3 hours unprovoked, which is really impressive.
Thank you.
As far as the Rome Schooled thing, I'm curious about that because I just I went back and revisited the episode that was focused on how the media treats politicians, and got to so hearing you interview Kate Brown, who at that point especially was kind of she was being trodden upon for all things wrong with Portland. At that point, every time I would leave Portland, I would hear about the demise of Portland due to Kate Brown. How did you approach the conversation with her, knowing that she was kind of like a kicking post?
We haven't really gone back, and I'm embarrassed to say, unless you remember,
I don't.
We haven't revisited. We put the show. The show was really successful, and it like got written up in the Guardian and the Times and stuff, and then it became like this make more show, have to turn it in every 2 weeks and stuff, and so we never have gone back and revisited until the other day. Now there's somebody wants to have us produce a revisitation of it. So now we're going to go back, and I did go back, and I didn't listen to that episode. I listened to the one about vegetarianism.
I've re-listened to segments of that one.
But they would ask questions because I'm a political junkie, and so I just have stuff on, and I talk to them. I've always talked to them for better or for worse, like they're regular people. So when politics comes on, and I fume a little bit, or I whatever. They would always, at age 6 or 7, ask questions like, what does that mean? And never let a word go by that they didn't ever understand. And I think, if I remember right, the Kate Brown thing was probably about the media. Like, she was saying something about the media. But then because of that interview, we ended up interviewing Madeleine Albright and Hillary Clinton. And these interviews never made it into an episode because it didn't really fit. It was like, Madeleine Albright had a book out called Fascism, and what is fascism? And I think Vern is like, well, if it's that, how do you know it when you see it? The questions that kids would ask, like what does that mean? I don't know. What's your favorite memory from that period? We spent a lot of time in a Winnebago, a little beat up Toyota Winnebago, like driving all over the country to have in-person conversations with people about that.
I'm trying to remember. I think one of our earlier episodes, Crazy Horse, was our first episode, right? We went to Crazy Horse?
Probably not the first, but we went to the Crazy Horse Monument.
Yeah, I remember that really well. I really enjoyed that. I think, honestly, all of our big road trips were the most fun because it was just us in a car, and he would play music, and he put on Crazy Horse, the band. And then we asked him, and then we ended up going to Crazy Horse.
That's how it went. Yeah. That literally, like, what are we listening to, Dad? Neil Young and his band Crazy Horse. What's Crazy Horse? Blah, blah, blah. And we would be in, like, Idaho. Or it's like, well, I guess we have to go to, is it South Dakota?
South Dakota, yeah.
Have to go to the Crazy Horse thing. And in doing so, learn that, like, oh, Mount Rushmore is not really all that it's cracked up to be. And it never got finished, and Crazy Horse is similarly not finished, and it's just this, and we would just learn and go and talk and have conversations, and then try to, but the hard work for that show was all in the post-production. Like, we would have long conversations with people, and then try to weave these conversations into, we would notice themes, but some of this stuff never got used because we would just constantly talk to people. Like, we never used the Madeleine Albright interview, which was one of my favorite ones because it was so it still is so prescient. She's not with us anymore, but like fascism,
Yeah.
what is it? Where does it come from? Why do some people follow that type of leader into the abyss?
Oh my gosh, I mean, more poignant than ever right now, right?
Yeah.
So, if people are watching this later on, this is recorded October 2nd. We're a month before the election for this next, forthcoming election in the U.S. Um, I will say, you've got two children who are nearing their voting age, and as my boys are now 23 and 25. Um, I remember a really important point in my son's life when it was the famous Birdie episode where Bernie Sanders came through Portland and came to the Moda Center. My son really, really, he wasn't able to vote yet. He was 17. He was almost ready to vote, or almost able to vote, but he had researched both of the primary political platforms, Republican and Democrat, knew all the candidates and all of their positions. He really wanted to go see Bernie. So we went to Bernie. It floored him, right? He was so charged and so amplified about wanting to make a difference with his vote at that point. The outcome of that election, just he was disillusioned, right?
Heartbreaking.
And so the thing was, at that point, his position on his vote changed, and he really felt like, his one vote well, he wasn't able to vote then, but had he been able to vote, he was disappointed that that one position wasn't going to have enough of an impact. And I told him, the way you have to look at this is you have to vote locally. You have to research everything in your community and understand that your community is the most important because it works its
Mm-hmm.
way out. Then you can see the impact of your vote. So obviously, your kids ask questions, and you're able to talk to them at least about your own experiences. As a growing human. Um,
They don't ask questions anymore because they know everything.
yeah, well, I mean, but they're going to be able to vote soon, right? They're going to be
They
able
know
to.
enough to vote.
And so my position too has changed over the last several years, because one thing that you and I talked about just before we went live was that the pandemic had a really profound effect on us. In my case, it was tough, man. I mean, I aged 20 years in the short span of the pandemic. My dog and I both grew really old together fast. And
My hair went white. I
yeah, I
had
mean, really,
brown hair
that's where
before
all
this thing.
I just keep adding color to it to hide the gray in mine. But I recognize all the things that were out of my control, right? Um, Everything. I mean, if I thought I had control over my environment when I realized that the pandemic shut the planet down,
Yeah.
it was a rude awakening. So with your kids, like I would tell my kids, stop getting your news from social media, stop watching, like skewed positions on things. My dad was such a political junkie that he passed away 6 months ago, and up until a couple of days before he passed, the news was on all the time, and
Mm.
his impending demise was coming. Right, he was dying, and I said, "Pop, I'm not asking you to put your head in the sand, but you should be finding joy as much as you possibly can right now. Find joy. And what you're seeing right now is really agitating you, and you're really getting angry about this stuff. And it makes me heartbroken to see it. So there's a couple of different ways to look at it. When you look at your kids and you want your kids to be educated and at the same time protect them from the evils of the world, how do you do this as a pop of a couple of 15-year-olds?
Oh man. Same way that you did with your dad, because when your dad is convalescing and you're taking care of him, you just try to augment whatever is coming in because you can't control it. You don't want to censor the
Right.
shit, so you just try to get in there every once in a while and say, hey, like with my dad politically is the opposite end of the spectrum from me, so we
Mm,
have a hard time talking a lot of the time.
yeah.
But we whenever I think of something that he might be tickled by, I give him a call. Usually it's something that they're doing.
I think this morning we were having a debate over how you should call the dimensions of a box.
Yeah, there's a new way that they teach math differently now, where this is no longer width and this is no longer height. New words. The words don't mean anything
Interesting.
anymore.
And you called them about amino acids or something the other day
Yeah,
too.
and so whenever there's something, so you just have to augment and just be a powerful presence, and you just got to keep giving. Is my answer to that. And it sounds like you did that with your dad. And I'm sorry for your loss, by the
I
way.
appreciate. Thank you, man. Um, one thing I've noticed, I mean, from the pandemic forward too, it seems like we're getting to this age. You and I are, similar sort of demographic that we're losing people more and more, right?
Mhm.
And um, I I'm an empath, man. When I see people passing or struggling around me, it's really hard not to just take all that emotion on. And so when I started doing this pandemic or the podcast, it was because we're sitting at home, we're not touring, and I started talking to other musicians that were in the same boat that we would tour with all the time. And it was more of a backstage hang, like we're doing, or a back van hang. But uh, and they were struggling with the same things, that it was an identity crisis issue, like what we've done our entire lives prior to becoming parents, especially. Music was who we were, right? That was our identity, and if we weren't on stage or in the studio or anything, it felt wrong and awkward. And when we were stuck at home where you're not playing anymore and doing the things that fulfill you, then it was really uncomfortable. And I felt like the catharsis of us chatting and hanging out was helpful. And for me, it filled my cup. It's really,
It's really great that you do this.
well,
This is
I miss you. I miss talking. I mean, this is the stuff that we would be chatting about, if you and I
Yeah,
were
but it
backstage.
opens up new opportunities so that it's not just small talk backstage, which is one of the reasons I stopped touring long before COVID. Everybody's like, "Oh, you had kids and stopped touring." No, I stopped touring because a lot of it is just really repetitive and there's a lot of small talk because you're so disassociated and you're siloed and you don't get a chance to really bond and have real conversations with people unless you've got a day off and the
Yeah,
other people whose bands paths you're crossing also has a day off, like and you're not exhausted or sick or needing to recharge your batteries because you've
right.
been like every night. So I stopped touring, and it felt so great to go back to playing live. And but this thing that you're doing is really cool because it gives people more of a chance to get to know each other. I think there should be more like just Zoom hangs, musicians therapy groups,
Yeah,
like. Kylene King is starting a musicians social services network of some kind. She's a violist I play with her once in a while, and I really admire that. Anybody who's willing to be like the post in the post position on that team, because we go through a lot of weird stuff as musicians. Just like
yeah,
repeat it. You were telling me some band stories from other bands that you were in who I also loved, and it's definitely you come out with learning hard lessons,
yeah,
and
yeah.
there's no moment, there's no after school counselor to go see.
Right. Well, and people that don't experience it would never believe it. They would never understand it. Right. That's like
Yeah.
trying to explain to somebody. I mean, your daughter there is a musician as well. When you have uh, this energy exchange between the audience and yourself on stage, and I talked about this, Jim. I talked about this with Andrew Paul Woodworth yesterday. He said, that it's a shared experience, and some of the euphoria that you get performing live is not just you playing your instrument, but it really is what you get back. And
Yeah.
for me, I way prefer the live experience than I do with the studio, just because the only return energy you might get is from maybe the producer or the engineer, or if you're maybe doing some basic tracks and you've got the bass player in the other room and you're kind of vibing off that, but you're thinking about stuff and not feeling it as much,
Hmm.
and so the next best thing is just to share conversations, and you look at the
Hmm.
things that are commonalities. You talked about the conversation you have with your dad being on the different end of the political spectrum, and uh, you can see more of a commonality that you guys have, hopefully, than your differences, and that's where you can come together and have
Yeah,
conversation, right?
we have to look pretty hard these days because we're both pretty politically
Yeah,
motivated. But it's funny watching Dana do her thing with the symphony. It's a different type of intensity. I'm guessing you were not a symphony player, Kevin.
I did play with symphony though in Montana.
Like percussion.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I
Well,
was playing,
I never
marimba,
did. So it's new for me to see these kids. Like I do a bunch of work now with Metropolitan Youth Symphony, the greatest organization in the world, in my opinion. And she's
yeah,
in it. And it's just watching them, and it's not as social of an experience for them, and they also don't feed off of the audience as much. It's more about the piece and the practice, like the
Yeah.
intense, the excellence, and how, they compete for chairs, and she gets upset when somebody else in orchestra, maybe kind of raises an eyebrow or something, and it's very intense. But the relationship to the music is so, it just feeds her.
Yeah.
And it's the same way as I feel about when I like listen to old records. It feeds me, and I can do it for hours and hours, and I'll play along with records. So yeah, we need more. We need to come back to in-person things. I want more chat, but meaningful chat.
Yeah.
Musicians talking about
Right.
music, not about, hey, remember when we did that? You guys,
Right.
and we used to call them geysers, the people who would come backstage and be like, hey, you guys are doing this, right? You guys are doing this. And they just geyser, and it's
Yeah.
this flow of nonsense kind of
Sure.
thing. And I
Well,
love that the people are excited to be there and stuff, and I love them. I really do, but it doesn't, it's a conversation that's likely to repeat
yeah.
again and again and again and again.
Right.
But music is always evolving, and that's one of the things I do love about recording is like you can rewrite it, re-record it, make it better, all that.
Yeah. Well, just before we went live, I know that I threw you under the bus and I asked if you'd even be willing to throw something, live. You mentioned, well, I could do a Jim Brunberg song, but it might be more fun if I just actually put something together right on the spot.
Here we go. I worked on this before we got on.
All right.
This is gonna be rough.
This is a brand new Jim Brunberg composition that he wrote about 55 minutes ago.
This is my little travel guitar. It lives in the van.
I love it. I'm going to make myself real small so we can see more of you.
This doesn't really have a melody yet, so forgive me, Dana. This is brand new. And I'm gonna go out on a limb and try it. I have it written. Musicians know this. You make a note for yourself, and
That's right.
maybe
Your eyes are
note
so good to be able to have it the text that small. That's nice.
Yeah, the eyes are holding up. Not
Good.
a lot of other things. I'm sitting in the parking lot while my girls attend the driving school. I'm just making up chords on the fly here, so none of this might make sense. I tried to teach them myself, but I totally lost my cool. Oh, I'm scared. These kids are unprepared. Our kids are so much smarter than we ever were. They'll clean up the messes we've left, of this I'm sure. They'll cure cancer, they'll end world war. They'll spread love, they'll save the whales and feed the poor. They'll genetically engineer a better knee, a smaller avocado pit, and they'll teach the world to sing. But driving, that's a whole nother thing. Oh, I'm scared. I'm scared. And they're actually about to flow out the final verse. This is as far as I got. If you saw the kids coming out of that door of the driving school, I swear you'd never take the street no more. I've watched gangly goofs flow out of driving class in school. And when my daughter drives, I shudder in fear and lose my cool. Don't I? You just gotta write about what's happening to you at this moment, and share it with the people who can tolerate hearing you. So I hope you didn't
love
lose a whole lot of viewers during that 2 minutes of
it.
improvisational bullshit.
I probably won't get a copyright strike on YouTube, which is okay. But I think
Yeah, that's not gonna happen.
you'll be inspired, though. I would imagine the Drakes and the Billie Eilishes of the world are actually going to draw from that and draw some inspiration. And
Oh yeah, that shit's gonna get sampled.
every parent that's out there that's experienced what you're doing right now can totally relate. So you write relatable songs. I
Yeah.
think
Well, I'll try to have to. Maybe this one will get recorded, and when I do record it, I will credit you for.
I'll get some. Well, that to me sounded like songs of Stupid Hope. I think I'm glad that this is
I'm
maybe a part.
scared. These kids are unprepared. I don't know. This
Yeah,
is like smart fear, not stupid.
yeah. You know what? I miss being on stage with you.
Yeah, let's do a gig, man.
I think the last time that we played together was a thing that Bill Wadhams put together, and he just threw some stuff at us. We were also unprepared, but
I was so unprepared for that one. The
well,
one song. Do you remember what happened? I majorly messed up Bill Wadham. I love Bill Wadham, sweet guy. I'll leave you with this story.
yeah.
He
What
put
was?
it was I don't think we might be talking about two different gigs, but we were both on. He had a big one in Phoenix. He flew in everybody, and we flew in, and the bass player for Animotion was unavailable, so it fell to me because I'd been working with him on some other stuff. So I'm like, well, I learned all these tunes and I studied all these songs, and the one song I didn't have to study was Obsession, because everybody knows Obsession.
Of course.
So I'm cocky. I get up there, I start playing the bass line from Obsession. I'm getting this look from Astrid. She's like, no, no, no. I'm like, no, no. Was I not supposed to start it? It starts with the bass and drums. And turns out I'm playing it wrong. I'm like, I'm making it. I don't do the chord change, or I'm doing the chord change twice as fast as I'm supposed to do it. Were you there for that?
You know what? You actually played with my son on that gig.
Oh,
You
your
did.
son was subbing for you?
I know I played drums on Obsession, but Caleb came and did I Engineer, I think, with you on that one. As like my son was 15 on that gig and actually got
Oh
on
my
stage.
God. It was the most embarrassed I've ever been, because I'm cocky. I know all these songs. The one song that everybody knows and the entire audience is up going, yeah, they're doing
Yeah.
their big hit. And I fuck it up.
Yeah, you know what, man? It's not out there on YouTube for people to see, so nobody's ever going to know. But actually, the thing is, you felt like you messed it up. Astrid may have yelled at you just because she's mother hen, but at the end of the day, people just want to see them do their thing. You know, they
Yeah.
have their little antics that they do. But
Yeah, but I almost prevented them from doing it because there was no way for them to come in.
oh,
Because I was like, I was supposed to
oh,
just go.
that's right. I do remember that. That's right. But there was another cool gig though. Didn't we do a White Eagle gig together that was
Yeah.
like stripped
I think
down?
we did a bunch with Bill. Bill,
Yeah.
I love him. He's
Yeah,
great.
me too. And he's been out doing his one man show. I don't know if you
which is beautiful.
Yeah, you did see it. Okay, I haven't
Oh,
seen
yeah.
it yet. I'm dying to see it. Hopefully, I can see it at one of your venues. I need
He's
to
still
check out.
he's still workshopping it. I bet you if you call him, he'll come do it just for you.
He did mention that I could actually come over and see it at the house where he could
Yeah.
do a little private show. But between Polaris Hall, Mississippi Studios, the Revolution Hall, one of these places I might get to see him play. But if nothing else, and I will be on tour in Canada with the Flock of Seagulls, unfortunately, on your debut, on your premiere.
November 2nd?
November 1st, you get the video release for Wolves with Wonderly, and then November 2nd, you're going to be playing in Portland. Yeah, man, the debut of the new Wolves record, I'm going to miss it, unfortunately. I'm going to be in Canada during the election.
Well, I love the Flock of Seagulls, man. That's a great gig you got there. But their first album came out. I won the album on the radio, and to this day, I still love it. It's great. Yeah.
Well, your daughter will appreciate this because we have a generation of people that are showing up at these shows that have discovered the band through video games. The Grand Theft Auto Vice City was one of the featured, the Iran was the featured song in that video game. Came out 20 years ago, but we've got teenagers that show up with Xbox and PlayStation cases to come and get signed. And now, 20 years later, this next year in 2025, the new Grand Theft Auto is coming out featuring Wishing I Had a Photograph of You 41 years later. So Mike Score hits the lottery again, man, and he gets another generation of people to discover a Flock of Seagulls, and into his 80s we'll be touring, doing these gigs, which is awesome. So
one of my favorite songs, if you get a chance to tell him this guy who just keeps putting out album after album, and I love sad songs, but the modern love song, Space Age love song,
my favorite.
That song, that melody, and the simple lyric, it's just so beautiful. That's one of my favorite songs. It puts me in a mood every time. Please send him compliments. I'm sure he gets a lot of compliments, but
well,
just lay one on him again.
We've been asked a million times which is our favorite song to play. That one is the same for all of us. I mean, that one, to me, that's the Goosebump song. When we do that one, the
I was falling in love,
and the guitar line that comes into that, da, na, 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 the crowd singing that, oftentimes when they sing that melody, is louder than the band, depending on the venue. When we were in England and the crowd kept singing that line after we finished the song, they were just singing over and over again. And the hair on my arm stood up, man. It was so cool. It was the best experience ever.
She can come in.
Oh, okay.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So we're going to get to see your other daughter.
I'm going to play that song for my daughters as we drive back from driving school. And if that sounded terrible, I trust you to cut it out of the show. But I don't care.
You sounded fantastic. Absolutely. And what I'm going to do, like I said, so this went out live on Instagram, Twitch, a couple of different YouTube or Facebook channels. And I'm going to then recast it on the YouTube channel to make sure that the subscribers on the YouTube channel can get to hear the song. And did you title it yet? The song about your daughters driving school?
No title. Just it's only an hour old. So we'll work on that.
All right.
And
well,
it's always so much fun to talk with you. So I wish we got to do it more often.
Me too.
Yeah.
Maybe, if you're there near the studios, we can just jump in and grab some pizza, and catch back up. I miss you. Yep, wonderful to meet your daughter here. It's a pleasure to see you. And thank you for sharing your dad with me.
Good surprise for me too. I thought she was going to be in there the whole time. So
me too. Thank
you for sharing your pop with me. I appreciate it. And Jim, thanks for showing off your van. That's pretty groovy. This is where you survived the apocalypse. I love it.
The other daughter.
Oh, waiting outside. Oh my God, that's so bad. Oh, well, thank her for the patience too. And
Jim Brunberg, you're the greatest, man.
You are too. Folks, if you got here late, go to jimbrunberg.com. You can find all the records. You can look at his venues. The new Wolves record release from Wonderly is going to be out November 2nd live, and you can see the video on November 1st. So I will put that in the show notes. And again, please subscribe to the channel. Have a beautiful day. Be good humans. Talk to you later.